The movie opens with a gorgeous view of a city in Australia. It's New Year's Eve, and so the place is crowded with excited people all around. Amongst them is a man named Teddy, who appears to be in quite a rush. He races through the entire city and finally enters a party. Once there, he approaches a woman and kisses her passionately just a couple of seconds before New Year's. As expected, the woman, whose name is Leanne, pushes Teddy away and simply stares at him in shock. Teddy, who is also just as stunned, apologizes profusely for his behavior and anxiously explains that he got confused. It turns out that Teddy's girlfriend was wearing the same dress as Leanne, which ultimately caused this huge misunderstanding. After a brief conversation, Teddy offers to get Leanne a drink. The latter agrees to the request and continues chatting with him. Soon after, Teddy bids Leanne goodbye and tries to go back to his girlfriend. However, that's when he gets hives all across his face and starts coughing pretty badly. Seeing this, Leanne gets worried and asks him if he's okay. In response, Teddy simply nods and tells her that he's severely allergic to nuts. When Leanne hears this, she starts to panic. It is then revealed that Teddy had somehow consumed a peanut in Leanne's mouth, ultimately causing him to go into anaphylactic shock. Now incredibly worried, Leanne rushes to get an ambulance. Meanwhile, Teddy's actual girlfriend, Becca, finally finds him and wishes him a happy new year. She tries to kiss him, but this just worsens Teddy's condition. Thankfully, Leanne appears right then and hands him an EpiPen. Teddy immediately takes it and inserts it into his body. Slowly, his condition goes back to normal. Now relieved, he thanks Leanne and smiles at her. This little interaction starts a whole new chapter in his life. Soon after, Teddy and Leanne start dating. The two turn out to be the perfect match for each other. After 5 whole years of being together, Teddy finally proposes to Leanne with the same ring that his father personally crafted for his mother. Shortly after their engagement, the two head towards a local cemetery where Teddy's father happens to be buried. Once there, Teddy talks to his late father and even introduces him to Leanne. The two stand there for quite a while. At one point, Teddy gets emotional, so Leanne leaves him at his father's grave and walks away. Just then, a strange lady approaches him and congratulates him on the engagement. She then asks him to marry Leanne as soon as he can. In response, Teddy simply smiles and states that he has way too much to do before the wedding. Upon hearing this, the lady looks at him sternly and asks him what he would do if time passed a lot faster for him than for everybody else. Totally confused, Teddy tries to walk away, but the lady stops him. Excited, she proceeds to give him a wedding gift. Soon, 2 weeks pass by, and the wedding finally comes up. Everything seems to be going pretty smoothly. All the guests congratulate the lovely couple and wish them a happy life ahead. At one point, Teddy's best friend asks him about the honeymoon, to which the latter replies that he has a lot of things to consider. He likes to wait until the perfect moment for just about anything and everything. However, after seeing Leanne's disappointed face, Teddy promises to plan the honeymoon as soon as possible. The two then begin dancing together and have loads of fun. Later that day, Teddy and Leanne move into their new home. Both of them appear to be excited about their future together. They explore all the rooms in the house and plan on the renovations needed. Soon after, they go to their bedroom and make out passionately. There, Teddy tells Leanne about his undying love for her. Love-struck, he promises to cherish her and support her through everything. In response, Leanne simply smiles and gets up to change out of her wedding dress. Whilst Leanne continues changing, Teddy goes over to the massive pile of wedding gifts. He excitedly opens them up and tells Leanne about all the nice things they've received. Just then, Teddy sees a small gift box. Curious, he opens it only to find a tin can with a note that says "Do not open for 10 years." Despite the note, he tries to open it, but that's when Leanne comes over and distracts him. As a result, the tin can remains unopened whilst the two make love and spend the night together. The next morning, Teddy wakes up to see Leanne gone. Worried, he calls out to her and is relieved to learn that she's just in the bathroom. However, when he finally gets up, he realizes that the house is somewhat different. Confused, he looks around and sees that almost all the furniture has already been set up. The flowers and plants that they bought have also surprisingly grown massive. Now incredibly perplexed, Teddy calls out to Leanne and asks her about the plants. However, when the latter finally walks over to him, he notices her huge baby bump. Initially, Teddy just thinks that this is all a prank by Leanne, but soon, he comes to realize that she is pregnant. Whilst panicking, Teddy asks Leanne how she got pregnant in a day. In response, the latter just laughs and asks him to stop acting like a fool. She then asks him about their plans for their anniversary. Teddy, who is now too stunned to comprehend anything, simply asks Leanne to explain everything. At that moment, the latter replies that they got married a year ago. Surprisingly, it turns out that somehow a whole year had passed since their wedding and Teddy had no memory of it all. When Teddy finally realizes that a year has gone by, he becomes really confused. He looks around and tries to search for a clue, but to no avail. Eventually, he becomes convinced that he is suffering from Alzheimer's disease. After seeing Teddy's distraught state, Leanne asks him to calm down and assures him that he's all right. She then tries to distract him by talking about their baby. Excited, she tells him that they should start decorating the nursery. Sadly, Teddy ignores Leanne and tries to remember all the events of the past year. Eventually, he lies down and falls asleep. At that moment, specs engulf Teddy and shift him to an alternate reality. As if expecting the weird dream to end, Teddy wakes up and looks around. This time, he finds himself in a different room. Now incredibly worried, he runs out and searches for Leanne. Soon enough, he finds her, and much to his surprise, he sees that she's not pregnant anymore. This makes Teddy elated. He smiles in excitement and tells Leanne all about the dream he had. However, just then, he hears a child crying. Surprisingly, it turns out that Teddy had somehow traveled further in time and reached a point where he already has a child. When he realizes this, he tries his hardest to remember his past life but fails miserably. He walks around the entire house and sees several pictures of him with his daughter. This sends him over the edge. Desperate, Teddy even looks through his Instagram and sees several posts dedicated to Leanne and his daughter. Shortly after, Leanne walks over to him with their child. Exhausted, she asks him to hold the baby, but Teddy instantly refuses. However, Leanne doesn't budge and asks him to take care of their daughter. With no other option left, Teddy hesitantly takes the baby and caresses her. Whilst doing so, he realizes just how adorable his daughter is and holds her with utmost love. Eventually, Teddy realizes that if this continues, he will simply go crazy. Worried, he drags Leanne to the side and tells her all about his dilemma. He tells her that he's traveling through time. Upon hearing this, Leanne just laughs and asks him to get a grip on himself. She then asks him to stop having such weird breakdowns during their anniversary. When Teddy hears this, he ends up realizing that he has been traveling through time and reaching his wedding anniversaries. He tries to think of a reason for this weird occurrence, but nothing significant comes up. Having no idea as to what's going on, Teddy tries to act as if everything is normal. He wishes Leanne a happy anniversary and talks to her about all their moments together. He even brings up their honeymoon and tells her just how fun he had. That's when Leanne informs him that they never had a honeymoon. Like always, Teddy had postponed it and continued with his work. It's evident that he never really cared about anything but his job. After thinking for a long time, Teddy finally calls his best friend, Sam, and asks him to come over. He urges the latter to visit him during his third wedding anniversary and even asks him to bring a gift. He then takes an orange and hides it behind the indoor plant to see what's going on. Soon after, the specs appear again and Teddy is shifted further in time. He now ends up on his third wedding anniversary. Immediately after coming back to his senses, Teddy runs over to the indoor plant and searches for the orange. Much to his surprise, he finds the fruit at the same place where he had initially hidden it. However, this time, the fruit is completely rotten. Teddy then runs out of his house and sees Sam waiting for him. He hugs his best friend tightly and takes him to a nearby beach. Once there, Teddy explains to Sam that his life is going by way too fast. He further goes on to say that every few minutes, he ends up traveling through time. After learning all about Teddy's dilemma, Sam theorizes that his problem is very similar to the movie Groundhog Day. He then continues and says that to break the curse, Teddy must have a perfect day and make no mistakes. Hearing this, the latter comes up with a solution and runs back home. However, before leaving, he asks Sam to meet him again at the same time next year. Sam hesitantly agrees to the request and hands Teddy the present he had brought. The latter hastily takes the small gift and rushes back home. Once there, he wishes Leanne a happy anniversary and gives her a present. Leanne smiles at the gift and asks him where their daughter, Tallulah, is. In response, Teddy just stares at her and hastily begins looking for his daughter. Thankfully, he finds her playing in the nursery and tells Leanne that he just heard Tallulah say her first word. However, that's when Leanne corrects him and says that Tallulah has already said her first word. Eventually, Leanne realizes that Teddy doesn't remember any of their family moments and becomes disappointed. Upset, she comments about how he's always working. In response, Teddy simply grimaces and comments that if Leanne had a job then he wouldn't have to work so hard. This enraged the latter, causing her to storm away. Teddy tries to apologize, but that's when Leanne asserts that couple counseling isn't working anymore. It turns out that since Teddy is never at home, the couple now have a very strenuous relationship. As the fight goes on escalating, Teddy promises Leanne that he will change and even assures her that he will be better. Upon hearing this, the latter pulls out some letters that the two had written for one another as per the counselor's advice. Teddy is initially surprised by the letters but tries his best to remain calm. He asks Leanne to read her letter and that's when he learns just how unhappy she is. In her letter, Leanne confesses that she doesn't like the man that Teddy has become. Further, she claims that she just wants to spend more time with him. Shortly after, Teddy begins reading his letter whilst hoping that it might help him convey his feelings. However, as he goes on reading, he learns that the letter shows nothing but resentment towards Leanne. The letter talks about how her dream of becoming a writer is just useless. When Leanne finally learns this, she gets agitated and accuses Teddy of being jealous. She calls him out for never pursuing his dream of becoming a photographer and continuing a job that he hates. Leanne then berates him for being such a procrastinator. Enraged, she walks out and as a result, Teddy is shifted further into the future. Teddy now reaches his fourth wedding anniversary. Despite being utterly confused, he looks around for Leanne and tries to talk to her. However, he soon finds out that the house is empty. There aren't indoor plants or photos hanging from the walls anymore. This causes Teddy to panic as he doesn't know what has happened. Just then, the doorbell rings and Teddy rushes to answer it. but much to his dismay, he only sees Sam. Worried, he asks the latter about Leanne. In response, Sam simply tells Teddy that Leanne is now separated from him. It turns out that after having had enough, Leanne had decided on a trial separation. When Teddy hears this, he is devastated. Now incredibly worried, he starts pacing around the entire house whilst planning to get Leanne back. Desperate, he calls her and tries to make up for all his mistakes. He wishes her a happy anniversary and even tells her that he has got a present for her. In an attempt to get things right, Teddy invites Leanne over, but the latter instantly declines. This makes Teddy incredibly frustrated, so he goes to the kitchen to grab a beer. However, that's when the specks appear again, shifting him further in time. Now, it's Teddy's 5th anniversary and things are even worse than before. As soon as he enters the living room, he sees Leanne looking for something. Relieved, he runs up to her and proceeds to kiss her. However, that's when he comes to learn that the woman he kissed isn't Leanne but his ex, Becca. Shocked, Teddy anxiously asks Becca what she's doing at his house, and that's when the latter replies that she had spent the night with him. She then tries to remind Teddy about how they have been hooking up for months. Hearing this, Teddy starts panicking and asks Becca about her marriage. In response, she simply replies that her marriage ended almost a year ago. She even goes on to say that even though things were amazing a couple of years ago, it got bad quickly. Eventually, Teddy realizes that he has messed up a lot and tries to get Becca to leave. However, just then, there's a knock on the door and Teddy hears Leanne call out to him. Now panicking, he rushes Becca onto the terrace whilst running to open the door. He tries his best to keep calm and happily chats with Leanne. As soon as the latter walks in, she profusely apologizes to Teddy for being so cold towards him. She even confesses that she misses him a lot. Hearing this, Teddy becomes excited and asserts that he wants to make things right. He even apologizes to Leanne for all his mistakes. Needless to say, Leanne instantly forgives Teddy and kisses him passionately. The two then proceed to make love. However, while they're making out, Leanne finds Becca's bra underneath the couch. Upset, she questions Teddy about his integrity and asks him for a divorce. In response, Teddy begs Leanne for a chance, but the latter doesn't even acknowledge him. Furious, she walks out of the house. Meanwhile, Becca, who had been listening to the entire conversation, looks at Teddy with disgust. Heartbroken, she also walks out of the house whilst vowing to never see him again. Seeing as none of Teddy's days have been perfect, he continues to shift further in time. Eventually, he reaches the day of his 6th anniversary and sees Becca at his house once again. However, this time, it seems as though the two have been together for quite some time. Moving forward, Teddy angrily asks Becca why she's still with him. In response, the latter asserts that the two now stay together and have been dating for quite a while. This makes Teddy enraged, so he runs inside his room and hastily calls Sam. He then walks out and apologizes to Becca for asking her to move in. Guilt-ridden, he tells her that he's still in love with Leanne and is trying his best to get back with her. Whilst mustering up all the courage he has, he finally tells Becca that they are wrong for one another and asks her to move out. Upon hearing this, Becca sighs and exclaims that she, too, loves her husband a lot and wants him back. She then goes on to add that if only she had the knowledge that she has now, she would have been able to save her marriage. Eventually, Becca agrees to move out and wishes Teddy all the best in his endeavors. The latter thanks Becca for her understanding and walks out of the house, where he sees Sam waiting for him. Shortly after, Teddy gets in Sam's car and starts venting about all his problems. Anxious and scared, he begs the latter to take him to Leanne's house. Thankfully, Sam agrees to the request and drives away whilst consoling Teddy. At one point, Teddy notices Sam's pitiful condition and asks him if anything is wrong. That's when the latter replies that he is suffering from skin cancer. Needless to say, Teddy is devastated by the news. Stunned, he asks Sam all about his illness. In response, Sam explains that he got diagnosed about 6 months ago and is now undergoing chemotherapy. Not knowing how to respond, Teddy begs Sam to get better as soon as possible. The latter simply smiles and assures him that he'll get better really soon. Shortly after, the two finally reach Leanne's house. Now incredibly nervous, Teddy thanks Sam for the help and walks over to the door. He knocks on the door and waits for Leanne. A while later, the latter opens the door and greets Teddy. They chat for a while, and whilst conversing, Teddy finds out that Leanne has already signed the divorce papers. She's also thinking about moving on to someone else. When Teddy learns about all this, he tries his hardest to make up to Leanne, but she doesn't budge. She's fed up with him. After realizing that Teddy isn't going anywhere, Leanne sighs in disbelief and walks back inside. Meanwhile, Teddy continues calling out to Leanne whilst begging for her to take him back. As Teddy continues to pace around Leanne's yard, the specks appear once again and shift him to his 7th anniversary. However, this time, he is greeted by Patrick, Leanne's boyfriend, who asks him to get out of their house. Upon seeing Patrick, Teddy gets agitated and starts arguing with him. Leanne ends up hearing the commotion and walks outside as well. She then begs Teddy to just sign the divorce papers. Enraged, the latter continues hurling insults at Patrick, which annoys Leanne. Now incredibly irritated, Leanne begs Teddy to just move on. She further goes on to say that she finally has her life under control and doesn't want any more problems. Teddy understands this and tries to calm down. However, just then, he notices that Leanne isn't wearing her wedding ring anymore. Confused, he asks about the ring, and that's when she confesses that she lost it whilst at the beach. She further goes on to explain that she tried her hardest but couldn't find it. Upset, Teddy stays silent and eventually agrees to sign the divorce papers. He comes to realize that Leanne wants nothing to do with him anymore. Moving forward, Leanne goes to get the divorce papers whilst Patrick walks over to Teddy and consoles him. Unable to control his feelings anymore, Teddy bursts into tears and curses himself for not valuing his family. At that moment, Patrick asks him to change his perspective and be more optimistic. Maybe that way, he could finally get a hold of his life. Eventually, Leanne hands Teddy the divorce papers, which he very hesitantly signs. Now completely defeated, he looks around and sees Leanne's dog, Ziggy. As he has no idea what to do anymore, Teddy simply takes Ziggy for a walk. The two reach a nearby beach and sit down together. There, Teddy explains to Ziggy how his life is just a blur. However, just as he's ranting about his problems, time shifts again and Teddy now reaches his 8th anniversary. He now looks pretty ragged and depressed while Ziggy seems to have grown into a big dog. As Teddy continues to sit on the beach, he sees a small chocolate and peanut bar in front of him. Having no purpose in life anymore, he picks up the bar and considers eating it. He's about to consume the peanut, but that's when a small girl runs up to him. Concerned, she asks him if he's okay. In response, Teddy simply looks at her and asks her who she is. Surprisingly, it turns out that the young girl is none other than his daughter, Tallulah. Overwhelmed with emotions, Teddy throws the bar away and proceeds to take a walk with his daughter. The two chat for quite a while and get close. Eventually, Teddy asks Tallulah to never waste a second of her life. While smiling, he encourages her to do whatever her heart desires. Shortly after, Teddy drops Tallulah home and hugs her tightly. He promises her that he'll spend more time with her. Just then, Leanne arrives at the scene and talks to Teddy for quite a while. The two catch up with one another, which ultimately cheers Teddy up. After a while, Leanne bids him goodbye and walks back inside the house. Just as Teddy is about to walk away, the specks appear once again, causing him to reach his 9th anniversary. Not knowing what to do, he knocks on Leanne's door but nobody answers. He then tries calling Sam, but the number seems to be disconnected. Worried, Teddy looks through his Insta and learns about Sam's deteriorating health. As he goes on scrolling through multiple posts, he sadly finds out that Sam has passed away. Devastated, he goes to Sam's grave and breaks down. He then yells at Sam for leaving him alone. Furthermore, he apologizes to Sam for never paying attention to him and not supporting him enough. Shortly after, Teddy proceeds to leave, but that's when he runs into the same old lady from before. He initially doesn't recognize her and just tries to walk past her. However, the lady greets him cheerily and asks him if he has sorted out his life. This makes Teddy confused, so he asks the lady if she knows anything about what's going on with him. In response, the old woman simply smiles and says that she is the one who did this to him. She then goes on to explain that this was her wedding present to him. It turns out that this entire time travel was just to show Teddy what his life is going to be like if he doesn't sort out his priorities. When Teddy finally learns about this, he blows up at the old lady and asks her to undo the curse. Sadly, the latter claims that there's no way to take it back. Eventually, the lady confesses to Teddy that she had also been through the same struggles that he is going through. Many years ago, a stranger had given her the same gift of fast-forwarding through life. She adds that she was about to get married to a lovely man. But thanks to the gift, she was never able to do so. The present helped her realize that she's a lesbian. Ultimately, the lady fell in love with a wonderful woman, and the two happily spent the rest of their lives together. Back to the present, the lady explains to Teddy that her lover is buried in the same cemetery as his father. So, when she saw Teddy and Leanne talking at his father's grave after their engagement, she decided to give him the gift. Shortly after processing all this, Teddy grimaces and asks the lady how to end the curse. That's when the latter hints towards the small tin can that Teddy had received as a wedding gift. As soon as she tells him about the can, time shifts again and Teddy finally reaches his 10th anniversary. Seeing as this is his last chance, he remembers the note on the tin can and rushes towards Leanne's place. Once there, he asks Leanne to find the old can. The latter thankfully agrees and hands a carton filled with their wedding presents to Teddy, who immediately starts rummaging through the box. While searching for the can, Teddy asks Leanne about Patrick. Much to his surprise, he learns that the two have already broken up. Soon enough, Teddy finds the can and proceeds to open it. Whilst doing so, he asks Leanne about the best memories of their marriage. In response, the latter lists out a bunch of things that she loved about Teddy. She's still in love with him. Moving forward, the two finally open the tin can. And much to their surprise, they see Leanne's wedding ring inside. When Teddy sees the ring, he realizes the ultimate truth. Overwhelmed with emotions, he tells Leanne that it's never too late and asks her to start over with him. He further goes on to confess that he loves her way too much to lose her forever. Upon hearing this, Leanne gets emotional as well and happily takes him back. She kisses him passionately whilst 1,000 memories of them float around in the air. After what seems like an eternity, time finally goes backward. The scene now shifts to Teddy waking up from what seemed like a dream. As soon as he wakes up, he looks around and sees that he has reached the day after his wedding. Now eternally grateful, Teddy kisses Leanne passionately. He then immediately cuts down his hours at work and takes a paid vacation. Furthermore, he also books his honeymoon whilst telling Leanne just how much he loves her. As the movie progresses, Teddy starts pursuing photography and enjoying his life. Additionally, he also encourages Sam to get screened for skin cancer. Now with a new outlook on life, he begins spending his time with his loved ones and making sure that he cherishes every single moment. Moving forward, Teddy eventually realizes the magic of the tin can and decides to give it to Becca so that she can resolve her marriage as well. The movie finally concludes with Teddy and Leanne going through everything their heart desires.